It's so funny that that Brian brought up yesterday the confidence gap versus skill gap thing because I gave a message to the Vast Action Group last week about the confidence gap, which was pretty. Yeah, I was like, oh my god! And actually, the first half of my message today is about that, and so that just kind of worked out. We didn't plan that, but you know what? Things are meant to be. So I over the last few months working with everybody, all the different types of reps across the country, I have found that a lot of reps, even if they don't know what they're doing, it is 100% about the confidence. Think about the first time you sold Cutco. You didn't know anything about the knives. We were just showing it. And as you had more confidence, even if you weren't really good at the job yet, we would sell more stuff because as the salesperson, you're talking to somebody. And if you don't have confidence, there's no way in hell that person's going to have confidence. You're the face of the company. You're the face of business gifts for them. And if you're not confident in the program, why should they be? So even if you don't really know what you're doing, the fact that you can lean on us having a national program, us having all the pricing figured out already, us having all the gifts, all the examples, you having teammates right next to you in the booth, that if you need something, you have the confidence that you can grab them real quick and help you. All of those things should make you have some confidence, right? So number one, even if you feel like you don't know what you're doing, which is probably most of the room still to some extent, if you at least can fake the confidence or even have the confidence, that right there is going to be the biggest difference. The first 6 months of me selling business gifts in 2021, I sold like 60 or 70 grand. It was the last 6 months of the year. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, but I talked about it with everybody. And I actually let the customers educate me on why they should be buying gifts. Turn it around on them, have the open conversation, be vulnerable, and ask the questions. I have done a lot of research. I got learned from Joseph a couple years ago that if you're going to do an industry event, you should probably learn a little bit about that industry, right? Like you should probably research where does the money flow, where does it make sense to give the gifts, what do people in this industry already give for gifts, what is like typically their budget, and you can look up all this stuff online. You can research it. You can even use AI, which I use ChatGPT sometimes for quick questions like that, and it'll give you like a whole list of stuff, right? And so there's some supplemental things you can use there, but when you're working an event, you never know who you're going to run into. Now, if you're working in a blue collar town, if you're working somewhere like in Tulsa, there's going to be a lot of service based businesses there. There's some unions there. There's some trucking companies, some like oil and gas. Like there's some industries like you're more likely to run into than others. Like when I work a farm show, like I'm selling residential, but I know there's farmers there, so I'm going to brush up on what does the farming industry do for gifts? Right, just because I know when I'm there, that's going to happen, right? And so have that like in the back of your mind that if I'm going to work this fair, the businesses in this area are typically in this industry or these 2 or 3 industries, and just brush up on it. But as far as being at the booth and in the moment, if you don't know who they should give gifts to, and they say, "Oh, I own a business and I do," like last year, I had a guy say, "Oh, I own a automotive shop here in town," and I was like, I have never even considered an automotive shop buying gifts, especially just like a small mom and pop shop. And I was just straight up, I was like, cool, we have this thing where we do our gifting program, and a lot of companies will buy these for their people. I'm just curious, like, I don't even know if you've done gifts, but if you did do some gifts, like, who would it probably make sense to give gifts to? I'm just asking him to tell me what I need to know, right? He was like, well, I hadn't thought about it, but I'd probably give it to the employees. Like if I didn't have them, I wouldn't have a business. I was like, you're damn right. Like, and now I've got that, and now I can leverage that when I'm closing, because he's already told me exactly who to get the gifts to. And I asked some other questions like, is there anybody else that it would make sense to give gifts to? Do you have anybody that supplies you parts that would make sense? Do you have anybody that sends you referrals, or is there another business like a shoulder industry, like shoulder industry being you're the head, and you have industries that are right connected to you that supplement each other, like you guys all 3 work together. And so I was like, are there any shoulder industries around you that you guys send business back and forth? Like, is there anybody like that? And ended up whiffing on all of that. But the main thing is I got him to tell me who he should give gifts to. And it was his 6 guys that work in the body shop. And we got lockbacks for him. So nothing crazy, but he told me what I needed to know because I wasn't familiar with how he should give gifts in his business. And I've done that dozens and dozens and dozens of times when I work with companies that are in industries that I'm just not that familiar with. When I was first getting into the home building industry, like it's obvious. It's a lot like realtors, where they're going to have client gifts, they're going to have employee gifts, but then the home building industry, in certain industries, it goes a lot deeper than that. Like heating and air, my big order last year, I just kept asking, like, who else would it make sense to give gifts to? And she was like, well, we have our service techs, which those are contractors that they contract, but like those would make sense to give gifts to. Well, who else would it make sense to give gifts to? Well, we have these builders that send us a lot of business. Like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so it builds my muscle too, not just for that conversation, but for down the road. If I run into somebody else in that industry, now I know and I can point to, like, oh, well, this person, here's the gifts they bought, and they actually do it for these people, these people, these people, and these people, right? And then you just start to open up more and more opportunity. But the key to what I'm saying is, if you don't know the answer, just ask the person you're talking to. Nobody's a bigger expert about their industry than the people that are in the industry, right? And you're not going to learn unless you have somebody like that you can ask questions to. And I think that's something that's underutilized a lot. Just be vulnerable and just ask a question. As far as the confidence gap, I want to. Now, I said this before when it comes to dropping down. We know how to drop down on the knife sets like the back of our hand. Like, we don't even think about it. We could do it in our sleep. It's so easy to us. It's second nature, but it wasn't at one time, right? We had to learn a structure by which to go. We had to understand that there's different drop down processes. If you're at an ultimate, obviously you've got a lot more ways to go, a lot more steps in the drop down. Where if you're at a 5-piece or a galley, like, you can still drop down, but it's not as much, right? And it's not as fast, right? And so you want to understand kind of where you're at. If you're looking at a big deal, yeah, 100, 200, 300, 500 gifts. You don't want to drop all the way down a pilot program at 10, 25, 50 gifts really fast. You want to go slower and try to take some time to figure out, like, where would they be, instead of going from the ultimate to the 5-piece. Like, there's some steps in between you want to do. And so people ask me my drop down process, and it's not necessarily a cut and dry thing. Because if I asked you how to drop down from the ultimate, and I asked you how to drop down from a galley, it's two completely different scenarios, because there's less steps involved, right? So, for example, if you're going to start, if you're talking to somebody and they're looking at 100 gifts, 200 gifts, whatever the number is, you want to slowly figure out where they're at. I'll tell a story about somebody I met at a farm show this February, where we were talking about lockbacks, and they needed 150 lockbacks. That's what they needed. That's what we talked about. I tried to close it. They weren't about it. I dropped down to 100. I was like, hey, what if we just start 100? And I got to 100 because on the price sheet that we all got yesterday, 100 was like that hard set quantity line that I like to use to my advantage, because it gives both of us a point of reference for a quantity they could start at. So I use that for my drop down a lot of times. If it's a bigger quantity, I just go to the next quantity down. Hey, instead of doing this many, what if we just went down one and we started there? Would that be more comfortable for you? Right? And then that was a whiff. We dropped down to 50. That was a whiff. Dropped down to 25. That was a whiff. And we ended up dropping down to 10. Got them closed at 10. And then once I got the credit card, and this is something I haven't talked about, you want to upsell just like normal. Don't get the order. Be like, thank God I got the business gift order. I'm done. That was a win. Because it's just like with the knife sets, just like with the cookware and flatware. You have to upsell, right? This person specifically, I upsold to 25, then re-upsold to 50, then re-upsold to 100, and then re-upsold to 150, all the way back to where we were. But I got them in where they were comfortable, right? And so that's another part of the conversation I haven't given yet, is once you get the credit card and you already know what quantity you talked about they really needed, upsell. Don't forget that. Once you get the card, that's where they're comfortable. You close somebody on a 5-piece. I closed somebody on a 5-piece and upsold to a kitchen a couple years ago, right? Like that's a whole nother part of the process we need to have. And I want you to think about it less like it's business gifts. It's this whole new thing. I have to learn a new skill set. You really don't. You already have the framework of the skill set. You just don't know maybe the terminology sometimes. And the customer can give you the terminology. That's not a problem, right? The framework is the same. The sales process is the exact same when you're at the booth, at least. And I think that that's something we need to, like, let's not cloudy that up. It's very simple. It's very easy, very straight to the point. Don't treat it like it's something different, because it's not. Just like Bert said with the cookware yesterday, like it's not that different, right? Don't overdo it. Don't spend 20 minutes talking about it. Give a couple of key points, make it make sense. If they're open to it, close something just like normal, then upsell if you have to, or if you can, and then go from there, right? Like it's not this whole new concept. We talked about something else yesterday that I wanted to bring up today. Is somebody talked about manufactured terms? It may have been Josh. With business gifts, very interesting. A lot of times, business owners are wearing some type of like swag on their person, and you can manufacture business gift interactions at these events. Imagine this: you've got a group of people at the fair. There's 2 or 3 different like couples or people at the booth, and you get to choose who you interact with, like for that specific turn. They're walking by, and you can either wait for the closest person you to walk up, or you've got somebody that's a little bit further away, and they're wearing a hat with a logo on it, right? If you want to, and this is what I would choose every single time, is I go, "Hey, sir, what is that on your hat, sir? What is that?" Even if I'm not wearing a hat, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And I'm like, "Come here." And if I can get them to commit their shoulder or feet at all, it's over, right? You just want to get them to kind of commit and stop. And then you want to point, if you can, this is basic sell stuff, but you want to point, if you can, in the opposite direction of where they're looking, because their body is naturally going to twist, right? If you're pointing the opposite way. If they're walking this way, you point over here and they're like, "What?" You got them, right? So you want to first recognize who has a logo somewhere on their person. Call it out, raise your voice. Don't like catcall people, but say, "Hey, like, sir, what is this?" Or pull your shirt or whatever, wherever the logo is. Bring them in, point them, so that if they're walking fast, they'll stop and turn a little bit, and then you've got them. They're not walking fast anymore. They're gonna move up to the booth, grab something, and show it to them really quickly and get them engaged. Okay, that's how you can manufacture more business gift interactions. And Josh and Carlton saw me do this at Tulsa last year. It was great, right? Yeah, exactly. It's so great because you're still getting the amount of turns you would have gotten normally. Now you're talking to more business owners, if possible, and they can buy sets and business gifts, right? So I want everybody to be focused on that this year at the fairs and at every event you're doing. Keep your eyes peeled for the people that are wearing logos. Now, sometimes, like in Oklahoma last year, I got bid a couple times because I'm like, "Hey, sir, is that your hat?" "Oh, it's John Deere," right? Like that's gonna happen. Don't like it's okay. Like you can still sell them residential, right? Like they did something to get a John Deere hat. They might be a farmer. They might have stopped and looked at something. They might have spent some money. Like who knows? But you're not going to hit every time. Sometimes it may be awkward. It's like, "No, that's not my company. That's like a huge company." "Oh, cool. That's awesome. Hey, by the way, have you ever heard of Cutco?" And you could just sell them something regular, right? But even with regular people, you can still pull them in doing that right there. So pulling people in, manufacturing more business gift turns is great. As far as the booth sales cycle process, obviously ask them, "What do you do for work?" This is the basic framework of what I've talked about already. But make sure you're asking everybody every single time, "What do you do for work?" Raise your hand if you do that every single time. Thank you guys for being honest, right? If you've ever worked with me, you know that at some point in the conversation, like a reflex, I don't even think about it sometimes. I just go, "Hey, by the way, what do you guys do for work?" If there's ever an awkward silence, if they're ever just chatting up with each other, or if we're getting to closing and I can tell I need some more rapport, I'll just throw that question in there, right? If they don't own a business, whatever, right? It's a rapport question. You can build that connection a little bit. But then if it does land, obviously we know where to go from there. Pitch the business gifts, which is step 2 is pitch the gifts. You want to inquire about the scope of the opportunity. I got asked last week, how long does it take when you're doing a business gift interaction at the booth? It really depends on what you're talking about, but you don't want to spend 10, 15, 20 minutes with all of them. You want to qualify people quickly at the fairs when there's a lot of foot traffic coming through. You don't want to give up 30 minutes of your time and miss 2 or 3 other turns, right? But the caveat is if you have that person that's going to buy an ultimate, there's nothing more valuable you can do in that hour of your time than sell the ultimate. Same thing for business gifts. Like if you're averaging 3, 4, 5K an hour, cool, don't talk to them, right? But there's almost never unless you're working Iowa, where it's super busy, almost never are you going to average 2, 3, 5K in an hour. So take that hour, that could be the most important hour of your day, and don't feel bad about taking more time with that client. If it takes the extra bit of time, totally fine. Don't get nervous about it. Don't try to like rush it. Slow down, make them comfortable, right? Get them locked into something, and then take your time upselling. Okay? The upselling process with business gifts could be massive. It's all about just getting them to commit to something. Once you get them to commit, even if it's a sample, I've had people that hell bent on not spending money. I get them to buy a lockback or a knife, a Cook's combo, and then I'm like, hey, you're already spending the money. You want to wait? That's totally fine. But since we're already here, you're already getting this. If I did something extra special to make you feel taken care of at the event, would you be open and just getting the 10 or 15 or whatever that you were looking at? Would you be open to it? Like, you're gonna need them anyways. Would you be open to that? Go ahead and upsell, right? Like, don't think that because you missed the opportunity on selling it initially that you can't upsell. Okay, take that time. It's okay. You're gonna sell. You're gonna sell to them, and you might as well maximize it while they're in front of you. The most qualified business clients are the ones that are buying. You don't want to have to follow up unless, like, if you don't have to follow up, don't follow up. Right? Do what you can to get them closed in front of you, because you'll odds are you're not going to see that person in person again in front of a booth for at least a year, right? And so you can do the follow up, send the emails back and forth, but if at all possible, they're already there. Do what you can to get the biggest order possible with them while they're at the booth. So what do you do for work? Pitch the gifts, inquire about the scope of opportunity. Like I said, obviously the employees and clients are the main ones. That's a given with every company, no matter what. They can usually give gifts to employees and clients. Okay. But sometimes companies, you have to figure out who the clients are. Sometimes that person is the client. Sometimes that person is the end of this, of like the cycle, the end of the supply chain. They're working with, like, their retail. They're not going to, give a gift to somebody that is only spending $10, $50, $100, $200, $300, $400, $500 with them. Doesn't make sense. It's not justified. But sometimes you can ask people, like insurance agents, is one specifically. Like, they might have 3, 4, 5,000 clients. There's no way in hell they're going to give a good gift to all those people. Right? That's why they send out calendars and like knickknacks and stuff. But something I found recently is if you ask about their commercial accounts, so even a retail facing company, that you're like, man, like, probably wouldn't make sense. I never even thought about like commercial or insurance companies having commercial clients until I was having a conversation with a State Farm agent recently. And I was like, well, I know you have all these customers. Like, how many people do you have? Like, how many accounts? She's like, oh God, like thousands. Like, cool. Do you have any that you would give a gift, like a nice one to? Like, do you have any big accounts? Like, what does that look like? She's like, actually, yeah. I actually do work with some commercial companies too. And I was like, hell yeah, let's look at this. Let's go from there. And she ended up getting like 50, $200 gift sets, which before that, I had never even considered it. But again, I was like, hey, I don't know how this works. I don't even know if this is going to work, but who would you give these gifts to? And she told me exactly what I needed to know. And ever since then, every insurance agent I talk to, not all of them work with businesses or as many businesses, but I ask every time now because I've been educated by somebody in the industry, right? So a year from now, you guys are going to have had all these other conversations. You're going to be asking them those questions. And all of a sudden now you know what you didn't know a year ago. You can have more educated conversations with people. And year after year after year, as you have more conversations, you guys are going to be as versed as I am right now, right? Because you're going to be talking to those people over and over again. And so as far as the scope of the opportunity, figure out the people that they could give the gifts to. That could be a wide range of people. But then you want to start doing the trim down process. This is very important. Might be one of the most important parts of this, because if you skip this step, your odds of closing are almost zero. Okay, unless you just happen to run across somebody who told you the people and they would give gifts to all of them, right? If you happen to be in that scenario, you're lucky, right? But that's not usually the case. For example, if I had just asked the State Farm agent, how many clients do you have? Oh, I've got 3,300. Awesome. Well, here's our gifts. And if you do 3,300, here's the pricing on it. And I try to close on it. That doesn't make any sense, right? I'm trying to close something that's literally, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that I'm going to close that order. It doesn't make sense, right? So you have to ask the questions of, hey, who would you give a gift to that's $100 gift, or who would you spend at least $100 on for a gift like this? You have to ask those questions to skip the headache. I can't tell you how many times I talk to somebody at an event and I get really excited. They're talking about, it could be a small number too. It could be like 25 or 30 people. And by the time, if I qualified it, it's like, I really only need 4 or 5, right? Well, that's great. And 2025, like it's not a bad order, but it's not like a big sexy order. But at the end of the day, 4 or 5 isn't either, but 4 or 5 closed is way better than me chasing somebody for 3 years on 25 gifts. Does that make sense? So whatever that number is, don't get too excited, even if it's 10, 15, 20. Like, don't just assume that you can close them. Still ask the question, would you spend at least $100 on these people? Okay, cool, great. Or no, we wouldn't. Honestly, like, I might only need 2 or 3 gifts, and you guys probably don't even do that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that, right? Where they're like, you guys probably, like, I see the price sheet, it's at least 10, and you guys probably don't even do that. And you can handle that. Oh, actually, we do help people get less than 10 standard, but I can make this work for you, no problem. And we'll just honor it at the 10 price. Like, remember, 2, 3, 5 gifts, 10 gifts is better than 50 that you're chasing forever. Okay. Obviously, if you're talking to somebody about a bigger order, you want to try to close it, but then drop down, right? A homemaker is better than an ultimate 3 years later that maybe never happened. Go ahead and close them now and then upgrade them later. Same thing with the gifts. Close them now, add the gifts later down the road, later that year, or they got them, they gave them out to some people. You touch base with them the next year and they're like, hell yeah, we got a budget this year for this. We're going to spend, 12, 15 grand with you. Like, we already planned it. The gifts went great. We love it, right? Another thing that you could pitch to close in a drop down that's not in here, but just crossed my mind, is I've had people this year that you may be talking about giving gifts to clients. You may be talking about giving gifts to employees. But one of the most powerful things you can do, depending on the size of the company, is you can at least take care of the owners or the decision makers. And so I had a company that does, they're private investors. And there was like a big group that they would have to get this approved by for the big order for their clients, right? But they had a board of directors that I found out through the conversation, and they had like 5 people on the board. So what did I go to? I tried to drop down, that wouldn't work. And I was like, hey, what if we just did like a personal gift for the board? It's a 2-pronged thing. One, you need to get them something anyways this year, but also they'll get it, they'll use it, and then we can talk about it later this year, next year, because then everybody knows what the product is. They've experienced the gift. And then if you guys want to talk about doing it for the big group, we can. And if not, that's fine too. But either way, you at least got a gift for the people that you really need to gift for this year. I've done that with banks. I've done that with companies that have a small board of directors, 2, 3, 5 people, or decision makers or marketing team or whatever the case may be. But you can get that smaller order. It doesn't really affect the pool of people. It's not even for the pool of people you're talking about, but you can redirect it. They will spend money on that group. And then the next year you can get the gift for the other people, right? And so as far as the scope of opportunity goes, figuring out if there's a board or if there's like a leadership group, like a home builders association is something like that. Like, they have all these members that they want to do something for, but maybe they only get it for the leadership group, the 10, 12 people, example after example after example. Let's say the number is 100. Maybe you drop down to 50 using the price sheet because that's the next quantity price down, and you can offer whatever deal you want. Hey, if you buy 50, I'll honor it at 250, the 250 price, whatever the case may be there. Drop down from there to 25 or 20 or whatever they're comfortable with. And I keep saying whatever or whatever that number is because it's different for every person. Just kind of feel it out and figure out where they're at. Like, you guys know when to drop from an ultimate all the way down to a galley more quickly than normal. If like 3, 4 grand is just like you're not just a little off, you're way off, right? So you're going to drop down a little bit further, a little bit quicker, right? So it just depends on kind of where they're at. So close the full scope, close the smaller order, whatever that is. If it's a big enough order where you can drop down again and again and again, do that. If not, then you're going to cut down to the pilot program. And I'm going to beat this in everybody's head. The pilot program is not 10 gifts. It's not. It can be. Okay. A square is a rectangle, but a rectangle is not always a square. Right? It's the same type of scenario. It can be 10 gifts, but it doesn't have to be 10 gifts. Okay. If that's the number that makes sense, great. Pilot program for some people is 25 or 50 or 100 or 32, whatever that number is. The pilot program to the business owner, it's a psychological thing of we pilot things for our business all the time. This company has a pilot program for our business, and we can pick the number we're comfortable starting with. And it's different for everybody. The pilot program may be 5 gifts. I just did a realtor pilot program for 6 gifts, but she needed 30. So we're just piloting 6. She's going to give those out in the next month or 2. And then we're going to touch base and talk about getting a big order. Okay? It's just the pilot program is any small version of the big order, right? You could bring that verbiage out whenever you want to use it as a tool to get the order to make sense to them and to get it closed. And leverage it as something that, hey, we have a program for you. Since you've said no to all of these other things, I think this program might be best for you. And just leverage it that way to make it make sense for them to get them started on the business gift program. So the pilot program is really what you make it number-wise. Just use it as a tool and verbiage to make it make sense to them. Because one of the things is we try shit all the time for our business. So does every other company. It's not nothing, but it's not much to spend $1,000 trying something out for your company. But for most companies, like $1,000, again, it's not nothing, but it's not really a game changer. Like I spend $1,000 on shit all the time for Cutco that like I probably shouldn't have done, but I'm like I'm willing to try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Like marketing, for example. I've tried stuff with marketing and I've never had it not work, right? But at the same time, I was like, that's $1,000, whatever. I'll throw $1,000 at it, and if I get money, great. And if I don't, $1,000, I can sell, another set tomorrow. Like it's not a big deal. These companies are the same way, right? So understand that it's not a lot to get people started on the program. One of the best things that I've done this year is the 10 and under range on gifts, which I know is not sexy because it's actually crushed my business gift average order, but I really don't give a shit because I've made more money this year. My CPO's up, my orders are up, my average order's down, which I don't really care about, right? And it's not just made me more money, but it saved me money, right? And I'm talking about the sample program. So if you can get somebody that's not willing to spend whatever that threshold is for them, they're not willing to spend it, and it's at 10 or more, right? Instead of dropping straight down to, hey, I'll buy you a sample, let's add some more steps in the meantime, right? That's like going from a 5-piece to like nothing. In the middle, there's a 4-piece, a 3-piece, or a buy 4, get 1 free. Like there's some deals we can do there. Same thing with business gifts, just like the knife sets. You have to create more drop downs, more stopping points to see if the customer can enter at one of those points. If you don't offer an entry point, they can't enter there. So you want to offer as many entry points as possible, especially the lower you get, because you don't want to just go straight to 0 or straight to one thing. Okay. And so as far as the price sheet goes, now that we all have it, we can leverage that as 10 being almost like the hard stop number to them. And then anything under 10, we can make it seem really special that we're willing to do that for them at the fair. And it creates some gratitude on their part. We're going to honor the price at 10, which they're excited about, which with the full price gifts, that actually works out because of the engraving fee or the logo fee and all that stuff in case you need some wiggle room there. And then let's say they want, like they're not willing to start with 10, but it's like, hey, we do have a number, like the price sheet says 10, but sometimes for some special clients, I can tell you really like this program, build them up. I can tell this is really going to impact your business. Your people are going to love this, but maybe we just weren't expecting to spend, X amount of dollars today, which by the way is totally fine. Like you're here with your family, you're hanging out at the fair, you're eating a corn dog. Like I get it. Like I know where you're coming from, but I can tell this is something you really want to do. So I'm willing to meet you in the middle, right? We don't normally do this, right? We start at 10 plus, but if you're open starting today, I would let you start with less than 10. So I'm curious, if you were to start with less than 10, where would you be comfortable starting? Would it be like, hey, I need like 5 or 6, 7 or 8, and throw out a couple of numbers so they don't go straight to 1, right? You're asking them an open-ended question, and then you're throwing suggestions in there. And the suggestions are really important because before I started doing the suggestions, people would automatically go to 1. Can I just get 1? Right? And you can do that, but you want to hit the other numbers first, right? So throw out, would you want like 5 or 6, 7 or 8? Like how many would you want to start with? And start on the higher end of the range. And a lot of times people would meet you at like 5 or 6, somewhere in there, which quintuples your number, right? From 1 or 2, right? Close that if you can. If you can't, then go, I'll tell you what, we have this thing called our sample program, which we do at the fairs. Used to, you'd have to buy like a big batch of stuff, but here you don't have to. So what we would do for you is if you just want 1, you can have it. We'll engrave it. We'll set it up and set you up in our system. It'll be really easy for you to order more later if you decide to. But in the meantime, what it does is it gives you an example to look at. You can also show it to anybody who would need to see it, any other decision makers. And it's a great product, and you don't have Cutco currently, it sounds like. So this at least lets you know like what the product is, how it works, what's the quality, all that. And then what I'll do is I'll just touch base with you here, whatever time frame you want to set, and we'll just see how the knife is. And if you want to talk about more, great. And if you don't have to. At least you got a great knife here at the fair today. So would you be open to trying our sample program and getting the logo put on there and everything? Boom. People will spend $100 or $200 like that on their business. Like that's not even a thing. I get the question about the logo digitizing fee. Like, do you ever get pushback on that? I did before I started setting proper expectations. It's like, hey, this is how much the knife is. And then just your first order, there's a $50 digitization fee. So that's a one-time thing. So if you order more later, you'll never pay that again. That's just to get you set up in our system, right? And then you can offer if you want, if you have an EPS file or if you have it digitized already, you can email it to me and maybe we can waive the fee. But I don't usually offer that because it cloudies it, creates extra steps, all that good stuff. Then if they don't do that and you think it's a really money lead, they're not going to buy there for whatever reason, especially during the fairs. If it's early in the fairs or during Texas, you have a lot of time. You can, what's up? Yeah. You can order a sample for them, offer to do that, overnight it to them or to you, and have them come back to the event, and then try to get something closed later in the fair. So I hope that helps. Got some time for some discussion if we do.
Yeah, I think a lot of the discussion we'll probably end up saving for the table. But I literally put in the group just your framework of identifying anyone they could be doing gifts for, going through the process of trimming, dropping down to a pilot program, and then dropping down to a sample program you're charging for, and then the drop down when it's worth it is a free sample you're sending them.
Yeah. It's
just so scalable and so strategic and so simple. Like I've heard you give this talk, but I don't think I pieced it together as step. That's freaking beautiful. Guys, let's do one question. Anyone have a question they want to throw out? We'll save most of this for the tables, but or is your brain full? Are we full? Is our brain full?
What would you say is like your key to just like getting them comfortable with making a decision? What do you think is like the thing that you do the best that just gets them over that hump of like, I'm making a big decision?
Yeah. My favorite thing to do when I'm getting to closing, I can tell they're like on the fence about it and I just need to blow them over the fence, is, hey, just so you know, like we don't have to figure everything out today, right? So deflate the situation, defuse them, and then say, all we have to do today is just get the order started, right? And they're like, what do you mean get it started? Well, I know it seems like you like this gift option, right? Like, oh yeah, I would love, like that would be the one. Okay, cool. Just like with the knife sets, right? We say, hey, if you were to get something today, would it be this? Same thing with the gifts. So if you were to do a gift, like, would it be this one? Yeah, for sure, that's the one. Boom, you got a soft yes there. And if you were to get started, would you want to start with this many? Like, yeah, we'd probably start with that many. Boom, soft yes. Just like with the knives. Okay, trying to make as many parallels as possible to create some confidence here, right? Now you've got soft yes. You know exactly what they're looking at. And then you can pull up on the calculator, hey, we split over 6 months anyways. All I would need today is a deposit of this much. I don't even need your logo. You can email that to me next week. And if this is not enough for you, you need like 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 more, all you got to do is let me know when I follow up about the logo. We can add them on and we'll honor the price. But by getting it started at the fair, we're going to save you money. And if you're going to do it anyways, like, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty busy. You probably are too. This just gets it started, right? And we'll hash out the details over the next week or two. And they're like, man, that's great. Because usually they're not going to tell us this. There's usually like 1 or 2 minute things they're holding them back, but they like want to be perfect with the order before they do it. And if we can just say, hey, we'll just get it started and we'll figure out the details later. Most of the time they're like, okay, that's great. That gives me time to think about exactly what I want to do, right? But usually if we're looking at like 25 gifts, they're like, man, I might need 28. It's like, I'm not going to let 3 gifts keep me from getting this order closed today. If you want three more gifts later, like, we'll just tack on 3 more gifts. Hell, I'll give them to you for free. And if you use them, great. And if you don't, that's fine too, right? They don't expire. You can use them next year. But getting the order started using that verbiage, making it so simple that all I need today is, what are we looking at? How many do we want to start with and a deposit? Everything else we can do next week or the week after, whenever you're ready. That's fine with me. That makes sense? That is my secret sauce when it comes to closing business gifts.
Yep, Chelsea, do it. Let's do it. I want her question.
Just numbers. So I looked at the stat sheet. Stats tell us a lot. I'm just curious if you are heavier business gifts in the fall for sure. You are?
Yes.
Okay. So that sort of answers my question. In 2023, your business gift average order all of last year was $32.80.
Yeah.
That is massive. This year it's $21.20. I just wanted to know if you know your numbers, and do you think it's because of all this drop?
It's all the samples I've sold this year.
It's all the samples.
Yeah.
You're skewing
My
that?
order count is higher.
You're not worried about how the numbers are going to look at the end
Well,
of the
plus
year.
some of your bigger transactions are probably.
Well, I don't care about the average order because those samples are not all of them, but a lot of them, like those are the most hyper qualified leads I have because they have a sample. They're going to place their second order.
Well, I guess my question is just, do you see proof in the pudding of this drop down philosophy?
And then them adding.
More CPO regardless of
100%. Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Okay.
100%.
Because I think one of the big things is that program is allowing you to onboard people that were not going to otherwise do it.
Well,
Right. And
I just didn't know if the numbers were affected because of all the dropping down, or if it's just putting your foot. It looks like it's
order counts up, right?
Order counts up.
Yeah, and
Healthy.
And closing ratios up.
Closing ratios up. Order counts up.
He's not chasing as much.
I'm not chasing the people that in previous years I was like, man, like, should I buy them a sample? And I would send a sample. Like, I'm spending $100 to $200 on that sample, and I'm hoping that it lands the right way versus people investing in it. Now I'm saving $100 or $200. They're buying it. Now they're buying it, so I'm getting paid on the order. Plus, I'm saving the money. There's like a $200 to $300 profit swing on every sample you're selling. Plus, they're invested. At that point, they're also in your system. They're in your CRM. They're on your ROR. They get all your marketing automatically. You don't have to go in there and do it. You're not going to forget about them because they're automatically grouped into the marketing now. They're tagged to a biz order at that point. So they're going to get everything forever. Does that make sense?
Turnaround time's faster because you already got the
Turnaround time's faster. They paid for the logo fee, not me. Right? Like, it's streamlined. And you have to sacrifice your average order if you're selling those smaller. But like I said, I don't care. I'm going to make more money because they're going to, like, not all of them, not 100%, but I'd be willing to say 60 to 70% of those samples I sold are going to place another order.
I don't care about the average order. I'm just saying I think it's awesome that you know that you're selling more regardless of average order.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah. Even if that's their only order, I sold it and I wouldn't have normally.
Amazing.
You know what I mean?
Good stuff.
All right, guys, give this man some love. That talk needs to be studied. Every time he does it, it's cleaner and simpler, and I understand it better. and I'm slow, which is why I have to watch things a few times. One of the things I love that Philip threw in there that I just want to highlight it. I can't add anything to what he said, but I'll just highlight it. Where he talked about you should still do your traditional upsell, like up serving, upselling process that we're all so good at. It's just baked into the cake. You should still be doing that with owners, like with your gifting clients. And I'll say one of the things that I've had some pretty reasonable success with some of my gifts is I would just ask them once we finalize the number, finalize the deal, we're getting it ready. I just go, and you can't make it too big a deal where they have to overthink it because then that becomes a new follow-up point. But I'll just ask, hey, out of all these people you're gifting for, are there any like really key people, like any VPs, any of your like team leads, any people that normally you would do a little bit more for than the rest of the team, just out of curiosity. And just by floating that, and they're like, well, I mean, I guess so. And I just try to give them a number. I go, yeah, most of the time when people are doing gifts, there's usually like 5 or 6 people that they say, normally I would do a little extra for. And we have the little extra version. And I'm still going to give you the quantity discount on like basically your total order count, even if we do something a little bit bigger. So, how many would it be just theoretically? Like just in a perfect world, how many would it be? And so like I had one of my Build-A-Set customers that ordered like 70 homemaker blocks because they'd been doing Build-A-Set for a few years. Just by asking that, they're like, well, yeah, there are 5 or 6 people. There's the owner, there's a VP, there's basically the head of finance, and there was about 5 or 6 people. And I said, what we could do just for fun, I go, we could get them the bigger Cutco block that you already have at home. Because this was a past customer of mine. I go, we could get them that block for the complete set. Look, you don't ever have to fill it in, but I bet there's other times a year you maybe would just love a cool little surprise gift with them. I go, we can just keep working to fill theirs out, or at least it just looks way cooler in their counter. And they were like, I like that idea. So could we do 65 of this block for everyone, but then do 5 of the bigger blocks? And so just, by doing that, that was a simple one. The Bassett firm, they did 30 Petite Santokus. And I just asked the same question. I said, hey, are there any people? And they were like, yeah. And so I got them to add on, instead of doing 30 Petite Santokus, they did 27 Petite Santokus and added on 6 of just the Petite Santoku with the trimmer. But then all of a sudden, then that opened the door. So the next year I was armed with information and I was like, hey, I have some really cool options for your team and for your key personnel that we did the extra 9 for last year. So then I was armed with information. That just became part of the pitch. And then, by the way, the best part was once I had that baked in where that was just normal to them, like literally when they hit me up, they were like, hey, we need our 2 options. Like that was literally my last conversation. We need our 2 options. And so when I was in that upsell, I go, by the way, who's the single most important person in the organization that you actually are giving these to right now? And they're like, oh, it's the head of operations. They're like, she's the behind the scenes person, but honest to God, she's the brains. We can't pay her enough money. Like she makes all this work for the partners. And I was like, hey, I'm just spitballing here, but I just happen to think with the knives you're getting, there's this extra gift set that has an extra piece. It's one of my wife's favorites. Do you want to see even what that looks like, even if it's just something you want to add on for her in the future? And they're like, yeah, show me. And so it just became a 3 knife set. So now I'm at 3 tiers now with this company just from asking simple upsell questions that we normally ask. So I just want to highlight that because I thought Philip like articulated that in a way that I haven't ever. It's just something that's gotten a little bit baked to my sales cycle. Amazing job. Let's give Philip one more round of applause.